The information provided on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not intended as a substitute for professional psychology advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Although I am a licensed psychologist, this podcast does not establish a therapist-client relationship. If you are experiencing psychological distress or mental health crises, please contact a licensed mental health provider in your area or call emergency services. The views expressed on this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of any organizations with which I may be affiliated. Listener discretion is advised.
This week we are switching things up and we are getting inside of our heads and the heads of criminals. We're sitting down with our friend Ash.
Ash is a licensed clinical psychologist who specializes in forensic and correctional psychology, currently working with individuals in the criminal justice system, which means she talks to actual inmates.
And when she's not navigating the complexities of the human mind, she's out exploring the great outdoors. Ash is an avid hiker, camping enthusiast, and a full-time nature lover. She lives with her dog Bowie and her fiance Paul, who she's actually marrying this October.
Yay!
Congrats on that, by the way.
Yeah,
Thank you.
she's just cleaning up this world, one littered beer can at a time.
Yeah, tell us a little bit
True.
about that. I always see on your social media.
It's a company based out of Arizona called Keep Nature Wild. And they do these things called Impact Day. And it's basically all over the country. Groups will get together to do cleanups. And then you just post online to show it, to try to get other people out there to do the same.
Basically, Ash just has like the biggest heart out of anyone I met. So
Thank you.
it's no surprise that she went into the career that she has.
Yes, which we'll dive into. We have a lot of questions for you. We have some basic pop culture, therapy, psychology questions coming up. But first, we wanted to include you in our weekly segment of What Are You Mad About This Week, Ash? What have you got for us?
So I recently built a house, Paul and I have, which is awesome. However, our landscaping has not been done yet. And literally it is a mud pit surrounding every side of our house. And so at 5 a.m. when I wake up and I have to take Bowie out, he comes in caked in mud from his paws to his belly. And I have to give him a bath every single time he comes in from going to the bathroom. And it sucks at 5 a.m.
I feel you. I feel for you so bad. I have grass and my dogs are still coming in with the muddiest paws mud everywhere.
It's everywhere.
What's the solution to that? Is I usually keep like a towel by the door somewhat, but it looks like crap sitting there all the time.
Yeah. Also, the amount of mud that this dog has on him, I don't think a towel would actually get off. I don't know what he does when he's out there.
So you're seriously doing like full on
bath. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Every morning.
Every morning. Are you a morning person, or does that hit even harder being at 5:30 a.m.?
No, I'm a morning person in general. So I'm already up by that time, but I'm like, I haven't even had my coffee or have gotten ready, and I'm giving my dog a bath.
Yeah.
So
either way, that's a rough start. Morning person or not.
It is, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Maddie, what do you got? I'm mad that I'm not drinking a climbing kite like you right now. It's like a product, a picture perfect product shot right now. You're like, no one will ever know.
No one will ever know. How are they going to know? No, I can honestly like drink like a half. That's how big of a wimp I am when it comes to
Oh my gosh. I'm a wuss, and those are the only ones that actually like don't hit me too hard. Like it just makes me feel mellow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's relaxing.
There's one that Paul drinks a lot, and I can't remember what it's called, but it does not just mellow him out. It knocks him out.
Well, you're in Illinois, right? So you have as much potency as you'd like. I think these go up to 4. But then you know how not to get into like the THC conversation too much, but you know how THC, when it's mixed with CBD, the CBD balances out the effect of the THC somewhat. So there's 4 milligrams of THC and 4 milligrams of CBD. So it doesn't like feel like maybe just something with THC would. And it's such a small amount too. So
I never knew that they balanced each other. That's interesting. That's good to know.
I'm sure there's a much more scientific way of saying that. And people will probably be like, she's saying it totally incorrectly, but come at me. I mean, that's how
whatever. We like it, guys.
But what I'm mad about, you guys, when is the last time that you've like had anything from Panera Bread?
Probably over a year ago. 2 years ago, probably.
Last week.
2 very different answers. But okay, so you're not going to be that surprised when I say this, but one of the gals at work, Brady, she's like, hey, I'm going to grab something for lunch. Does anybody want anything? And I said, well, it depends where you're getting it from. She said Panera. I said, oh, great. I would take just like a cup of soup. So I got a cup of chicken and wild rice soup, and that's it. Guess how much it cost?
Dude.
$15.
I mean, close. No, it was $6.39. And when I say cup,
close at all.
I mean, it was quite literally like 8 ounces. It was nothing. It was the cup. So $6.39. Isn't that insane?
I have said it before and I'll say it again. It is like cheaper to go to a sit down restaurant than it is to go through those mid places like Chipotle, you know, like Panera type places that are like a little higher than fast food. I mean, even fast food is ridiculous now. Yeah, 2 You Pick 2s were over $30 last week.
Seriously?
Yeah, and really, I'm just going there to get like a healthy meal in every once in a while when it's better than what I would have done, which was put a frozen pizza in. When I say healthy,
healthier.
And, yeah. Like, I can see the calories on the screen and they have a drive-through. So that's what I mean by, like...
True. I mean, my chicken was definitely, it says no antibiotics, but it's not, like, real chicken. I can tell you that for sure. That was in that soup.
I tasted the antibiotics.
I haven't been able to eat Panera for literally almost 2 years now because I had to go on a work trip with one of my work girlfriends, and we were together for an entire month straight, and she got sick, and the only thing close to us was a Panera, so I was forced to eat Panera for, I'm not joking, like 8 days in a row, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done with Panera.
What was your go-to?
So I usually get chicken noodle soup and a side of mac and cheese. And then the mango smoothie. That's like always my go-to.
Okay.
Solid choice.
Good. I get the prepackaged soups from like the grocery store all the time. But yeah, when I want like a salad or something with it, I'll go You Pick 2. That's usually my thing.
Their Cobb with the green goddess dressing is so good. I'm not going to lie.
I got that and cheddar broccoli.
Classic choices.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Lex, moving on. What are you mad about?
I'm fucking mad at P. Diddy.
I'm not caught up.
Thanks for ruining my childhood. I used to love I'll Be Missing You. The song. Like, can someone remake it so that we can continue? Like, the amount of... I mean, this is kind of morbid, but the amount of funerals that song has played at and stuff, and now it's like they're all tainted by him. And just like the more and more I hear about it, it's just like shit you'll never forget, you know? You can't unsee and unhear and unimagine the stories coming out of these people's mouths while they're testifying.
Do you guys think Bieber is going to be called to the stand?
I hope so. I saw he posted kind of like a cryptic picture video eating pizza, and he kind of like put it in the same style or like alluded to it being about the P. Diddy case, and everyone's commenting on it saying that pizza stands for children or something like that. Yeah, like so I think he's hinting, people are thinking he's hinting at it, and I know that kid, though, how messed up he got. Something happened there. I also want to know how involved Britney Spears was.
Yeah. Oof.
I haven't seen anything with Britney. I do feel like Justin Bieber does not look well lately. So I feel for him. Something's going on, whether or not it's related to
He's
that. But
being triggered, it feels like, but
yes, and being a young kid at his age and being as big of a star as he was in general, he was in that position where like everybody wanted a piece of him so badly. And it's just so sad to see that. And then people like Diddy or whoever like taking advantage of that, knowing the business is awful.
I just think about with his situation, like, wasn't Usher the one that discovered him and then introduced him to that world?
Yeah,
So then I'm
and
thinking, like, that's another person that's probably going to be involved in some way.
I thought he was, and I thought stuff came out about him and how he peeked into this room when he was like 17 and Diddy like laughed and said you weren't ready for that, and all he remembered was like really dark lighting and like masks on faces and stuff.
Oof.
And then so like but now people are more mad at Usher for putting Justin in that position if he was in it already.
Yeah.
I can't remember all the details, but I scrolled into a dark, deep dark hole with the Diddy content. And I mean, it's TikTok, so you don't know what's real and what's not. But
Did you hear about the conspiracy theory that the LA wildfires were actually purposely started to burn evidence of all the people involved with the Diddy case?
I did hear that.
Yeah.
That's so messed up. The amount of people that lost their homes and
I
stuff.
know.
But like you see like Kim Kardashian posting that they lost their home, but it's like, yeah, but were you in on it? Did you have things at your house that could have been found?
Right.
It's
Ash,
just
you
scary that we'll
lived
never
in
know.
Southern California. Could you see something like that happening there? Like, is it just a completely different culture in general?
I could, just because Hollywood is super dark, man. Like, I just don't trust any of that. And case in point, did you guys see the Nickelodeon thing, the documentary on that?
On Dan
Like that?
Schneider and
Yeah, he was involved with so many child stars, and he was found guilty of doing those things. Like, that's a real thing, you know? So with enough money, I think people think they can get away with anything.
yes.
So
I guess I just never realized Diddy had that kind of pull. But when you're just blackmailing everyone.
but I think that's what the prosecutors are going to probably have to convince the people of, is that there was some sort of coercion, threats, force, something like that, where she would be not a willing participant, sort of thing. But
Well, speaking of Celebrity Trial, Dateline, 2020, Forensic Files, the list goes on and on and on. Why do you think, Ash, that as a culture we are so obsessed with true crime? I think we always have been, and now we have it at our fingertips.
Yeah, I think there is that is a multifaceted answer. I think just in my experience, kind of reading up on this obsession and like the true crime cults and online internet sleuth culture and all of that stuff, I think there's like three big things that come to mind for me, or that not only come to mind for me, but also that I've heard like narratives about from other people in the field. And the biggest one, I think, is just curiosity. I think as humans, we're just naturally curious about things that we may not inherently understand or haven't experienced ourselves. And that includes things like the dark side of human nature, or the dark side of human mind. And things like danger and violence that we might not experience in our day-to-day life. And we want to know more about that, and we want to kind of explore that but still be safe. And so true crime is kind of that gateway to letting us get close to it without having to actually feel the effects of it, which is kind of really twisted if you think about it. But like, I think that's a big thing, is just being curious about that sort of stuff, because we don't tend to come across it very often in our day-to-day lives. I think another thing is I guess, how do I want to say it? Like the enjoyment or the fascination with like mystery and problem solving and things like that. So it's kind of like when you're watching the true crime documentaries, you're like, can I solve this before the investigator can? Or do I know who the actual killer is? And I think that goes into just our human nature of wanting to solve mysteries and problem solve and things like that. And I would say for me, that's the thing that got me most interested. I was so fascinated with the why of serial killers when I was younger and starting to go to school, that I just wanted to know, okay, we know what the crime is. Now I want to know who did it and why. And it's like putting all these puzzle pieces together, and some of those pieces are missing, and you have to find a way to fill that void. And I think that, again, goes into like our problem solving and fascination with mystery in general. I don't know.
This is going to come off so wrong, but I don't know how else to say it. Who was your favorite serial killer?
I actually have a favorite serial killer. It's not weird. And the reason I enjoyed him, because I always root for the underdog even with serial killers. That's not funny. We shouldn't joke about serial killers. But no, Ed Gein is actually one of my favorite serial killers that I have studied. And true
not
story.
The person. He's not your favorite.
Yeah, that's what I was like. It's the fact that we're saying he's the favorite. Intriguing. The most
intriguing. And real story, in my undergrad, we had to take a speech class or whatever. And we had to do a full presentation in front of the group. And I did mine on Ed Gein, because I knew at that time already I was going into like criminal psychology and forensic psychology. And so I did this whole presentation, PowerPoint and all, like not even thinking twice about it. I had pictures of victims and like the bedpost he made with human skulls and lampshades that he made with skin. And I just went into it normal, no trigger warning or anything. And my professor was so pissed off at me. She actually left the room during my speech and then came back and said, you need to give people trigger warnings about that. And I was like, cool, duly noted. All right. You just never know. And I think I thought about this because you mentioned, Maddie, a few episodes ago, like you don't like the true crime stuff. Mm-mm. And I'm definitely a like hit or miss with it, because I don't like the glamorization and the romanticizing of it. Mm-hmm. But it is still very fascinating. And I think those things can coexist. So for sure.
I agree. Yeah. And there's a lot of positive things that come from it too, being that, you know, the victims are able to tell their story, or their families are able to tell their story and tell the world who this person was. And so when I think about it that way, it makes me less of like a cynical person about it. So I've been thinking about it since.
Definitely. I mean, I think that with a lot of things related to psychology and mental health, just there's a lot of, I don't know, glamorizing it. I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but it does to an extent also make me mad.
Well, and even even in social media, discussing mental health and crime, even some words like people are over-diagnosing some situations too. Like, for instance, the word narcissist has become a buzzword. And why are we hearing that everywhere now? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, is everyone a narcissist now? Or are we overusing the term, or are we getting better at spotting it, or all of the above?
I'm sure it's some combination of all of the above, but this is one of my very much hates of social media. I have such a strong love-hate for social media for so many reasons, but in the last few years particularly, there has been this like surge of mental health influencers all around, and a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are not actual professionals, and it irks me because that's so dangerous when you're talking about things that impact real people and real people's lives, and you are either misrepresenting the data or misinterpreting the data, or you're using it incorrectly so that people have this misconception of what those things are. It doesn't do anything positive for our field, and that really bothers me. And as of lately, the narcissist thing has been all over social media, and you can be can I cuss?
Yeah.
Please do.
You can be an asshole and not be a narcissist. You can also be very selfish and still not be a narcissist. And I think people are taking very minuscule traits of what a true narcissistic personality disorder is, and using that overgeneralized to people and saying you have this one minor trait of it, so therefore you are a narcissist. And that is really unfortunate, because that's not most of those people that they're talking about when they've described them. I've watched plenty of videos where they're like, oh, my ex was a narcissist, and it was like he wasn't, or she wasn't, like might have been an asshole but not a narcissist. And so I don't really know why we're seeing that. I think it's just another one of those social media trends where the pop psychology catches on and then it just explodes. And we saw it with like gaslighting. That was a big term that was being thrown around. And for some reason, I'm starting to see the borderline personality disorder start coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, these are very serious, persistent mental conditions, like mental health conditions. And you need to be talking about it accurately. Otherwise, you're just perpetuating stigmas and misperceptions and misinformation about it. So,
And I think, I think people want to. It's interesting. I think I've said this in the past too. Like, being millennials, we have tried so hard to get labels off of everything. Like, that was what we felt was important to us for society. And now this next generation is really into labels. So labeling and diagnosing and, figuring they want a label and a name to everything. So I think maybe that puts them at ease and makes them feel like they belong to something. Or,
maybe.
Kids of narcissists, and my ex was a narcissist. I hear that kind of stuff. Maybe it gives them a sense of community in some way. I don't
They just want a reason. They want a reason. Like, I did this because this did this to me, kind of thing.
So, Ash, what is an actual narcissist? Like, what makes somebody a narcissist? And I know not everything's black and white, probably, but do you have somewhat of an answer?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you like the diagnostic criteria for it, like when it reaches a clinical threshold, when we would typically diagnose that. But really, when we look at personality disorders, because a lot of people throw the term out narcissist without knowing that it's actually narcissistic personality disorder. That's what the actual condition is called. And the personality disorders, they're kind of grouped currently in like the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Conditions, our Bible, right? So they're clustered into these three groups. And narcissistic personality is part of what's called a cluster B personality. And so there's 4 personality disorders within that cluster, and they all share similar traits, but kind of manifest or come out in different ways. And then we also look at the underlying cause for some of those, and that's where those personality disorders differ. So for narcissistic personality disorder, this is somebody who has a pervasive pattern of like grandiosity, a need for attention, and a lack of empathy. But within that cluster, you also have other diagnoses like borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder, and those share that need for attention. And then you also have the antisocial personality disorder, which shares that characteristic of the lack of empathy. So you can see how they kind of overlap and share those characteristics. But for somebody with actual narcissistic personality disorder, the grandiosity and sense of self-importance is going to be like one of the big things that we typically see. They also generally have a pretty significant preoccupation with like unlimited success or unlimited power, beauty, love, things like that. And they really dwell on those fantasies. They might also think that they are very special and that no one understands them unless that person is also of that status or of importance. So they might say like, oh, you just don't get it because you're not on my level, right? Like you're not as important or as special as me. So you're not really going to get what I'm talking about. They have that excessive need for admiration and things like that. And then they also have a pretty significant sense of entitlement. And this is where it kind of overlaps with that antisocial personality disorder, because they have unreasonable expectations of others that those people should comply with their wishes. And they tend to get angry and very frustrated when they don't comply with those. And they'll use exploitive behaviors in their relationships to get what they want. And so that's kind of that overlap with antisocial. They lack empathy. They're pretty envious of other people, especially if those other people are getting more attention or seem to be more special than them. And then I think the trait that most of social media latches onto right now is that they engage in these very arrogant, hoity behaviors that appear very condescending and self-important. And so when people see that, they go, oh, he's a narcissist. But that is just one of many, many, many traits that we look at for narcissistic personality disorder. So if you have just that one characteristic, again, you probably don't have narcissistic personality disorder. You're probably just an asshole. So
how many do you need to classify? Because I swear to God, you just described my ex still.
Well, if it's the one I'm thinking of, yeah. But you have to have 5 of those.
He has like 8.
8 of them, yeah. But the other thing is you can have some of those traits. And if you were seeking a diagnosis, we would say you have traits of narcissistic personality, but it doesn't really meet that threshold where it's significantly impacting your relationships and your, daily functions and things like that. So there's other layers to the diagnosis, but those are going to be the traits that kind of describe the personality disorder.
That's so interesting. I'm guilty of throwing around that word, but it's more in an endearing way sometimes. Like when I catch the boyfriend checking himself out, I'll be like, "You're a little narcy."
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, I love the TikTok stuff. Love bombing, attachment styles, all of the above.
I love talking about attachment styles. My favorite thing when I'm teaching, like if I'm teaching a group or I'm doing some sort of group therapy, relationships and attachment styles are like some of my favorite things to teach people, because they are like, what? Like,
it's interesting.
What are boundaries?
Especially with your clients, or would you call them clients?
It's so funny.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do? I know that there are a lot of boundaries of what you can and can't say. So within the restrictions of what you can you tell our listeners a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like, who you talk to?
Yeah, it really, so somebody in a similar position to me would be dependent on the population that is at the location they're working, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. because each facility, whether it's county, state, federal, whatever, a lot of those facilities are going to have specific missions, so to speak. And depending on those missions will depend on what type of people you house there, what type of incarcerated people you house there. So just as an example, if you were at a facility that was considered like a medical center, or like the equivalent of a state hospital, but inside of a correctional facility, you are going to have individuals that have very severe mental illnesses. And you're probably dealing more with like individuals with psychosis and things like that. And so your day-to-day job is going to look much different. That's going to be like, I'm going to go check on you to make sure you took your medications today. I'm going to go check on you to make sure you brushed your teeth and you showered today. But actual therapy is probably going to be limited because their reality just is not the same as ours. So you can't really do very good therapy with that. But then you also have other programs that are more behaviorally oriented. So individuals that are really disruptive or violent. And then of course you have the different things like forensics. You could be a forensic psychologist within the correctional setting. You could be specifically working with individuals who've committed like sex offenses and things like that. So it really depends on the population that's at the facility that you're at. So my day-to-day right now is mostly individual therapy and group therapy and crisis interventions. So it just depends on the day, but no day is the same. So previously I would do more group treatment than anything. And then a couple facilities ago, I was doing things like forensic evaluations and things like that, which is very different than therapy because the clientele, you're working for the court at that point. You're working for the criminal justice system. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Is it scary?
It's scary.
But I mean, you're probably, I mean,
No.
it probably depends on the day, but I mean,
I've been working within corrections in some capacity since 2011. Minus like a year and a half where I stepped out to do some really nerdy shit and I wanted to get that out. Like I went and did I did a year at a was a neurobehavioral center in a hospital, and so I was doing neuro assessments with individuals that were affiliated with the NFL because we were doing research on CTE.
Awesome.
And then in addition to that, at the same time, I was doing a pharmaceutical study for individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's. And so I was testing the effectiveness of the medication with them. And so it had nothing to do with corrections, but I really wanted to do that. So I took like a side road and then came back to corrections.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was actually one of my favorite experiences, but no, it's not scary. And I think you're right, Lex, in that most of the time psychologists and psychology staff have really high respect from incarcerated individuals, mostly because we firmly believe of still treating them like human beings. But also they're generally very vulnerable with us. And so they're telling us of their traumas and their struggles, and we're trying to help them navigate that. And so we do that unconditionally, and we provide them that unconditional support, and we're not judging them on that. And I think that a lot of times people in that position have been judged very harshly of their history and their past. And so I haven't had any experience where I personally felt like threatened or unsafe. But I have been in very unsafe situations. It just wasn't directed toward me. So
no like Hannibal Lecter, Clary situations.
No, the closest I would say was actually someone I worked with in a juvenile hall way back in the day. And I truly believe it was like my first ever encounter with a actual psychopath.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah.
Speaking of, what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath?
I love this question, by the way. I actually did one of my master's. It wasn't a thesis, but it was basically a thesis. I did a paper on this exact thing, and it was really, really cool. But I think there are a lot of misconceptions about psychopaths and sociopaths, and I think that the terms are often used interchangeably. When I think about the difference between sociopaths and psychopaths, I really fall in line with one of my favorite psychologists, who's Dr. Robert Hare. And he is basically the father of psychopathy. He devoted most of his career studying psychopathy, and he actually created a kind of an evaluation or assessment to assess for different psychopathy traits. He's just rad, and I love him, and I wish I could have been like a protege of his, but I could not. Anyway, he wrote this amazing book called Without Conscience. So if there's anyone out there that, one, likes more true crime stuff, but also is just very interested in this spectrum of traits, I would say, read that book. It's super, super good. He also had an actual protege, Kent Kiehl, I think was his name, and he wrote a book called The Psychopath Whisperer, and that has more of like a scientific feel to it, but they both talk about those differences and how psychopathy is really amongst us more often than we know. But I align with how Dr. Hare differentiates the two, and that is that neither of them are formal clinical diagnoses. So we don't actually diagnose someone with psychopathy. It does fall under that umbrella of the antisocial personality disorder. And he really differentiates the two under that umbrella as psychopathy being largely biological. And what I mean by that is that those traits are often influenced by like genetics or neurological deficits. So those are things like they did a lot of brain scans of people that they did find having psychopathic traits. And their amygdala was actually underactive in all of those brain scans. So that's what he means by psychopathy being more biological. Whereas a sociopath, those traits are more environmental, or at least that's what he had found. And so when we describe somebody that is a psychopath, those individuals are usually calm, cool, collected, and most importantly, extremely intelligent and extremely calculated. So their crimes, when they engage in criminal behavior, they are very planned, very strategic, very goal-oriented, very meticulously planned. And the most scary thing, I think, when it comes to psychopaths is that they have actually been found to have reduced physiological reactions or responses to fear. So if they are presented to a fearful situation or something that would normally evoke fear in us, they literally don't have a physiological response to that, which that terrifies me. I'm like, that's insane. Like, that's crazy, right?
I'm like, I'm jealous kind of though too.
Exactly. And I would say, well, I'll come back to that. So in terms of sociopath, that's again more environmental from what we've seen in research. But these individuals are more like hot-headed and reactive. So you're going to see like the violent outbursts, the anger outbursts and things like that. And so their crimes, if they commit crimes, are going to be less precise, less thought out, and oftentimes more, I guess I would say the word almost opportunistic or impulsive. Like it's not meticulously planned out like individuals who are psychopaths would do for their crimes. Regardless, they're all kind of part of the same clinical construct, and they have overlapping traits like most mental health conditions do and most traits do. But I did write down a quote from Dr. Hare that has always stuck out to me about psychopaths. And he says, psychopaths, I'm going to read this. Hold on. So it says, psychopaths are social predators who charm, manipulate, and ruthlessly plow their way through life, completely lacking in conscience and feeling for others. Hence the title of his book, Without Conscience. And so I think they're both on the same spectrum. It's just the etiology is a little bit different, and how those traits are presented are a little bit different. But I think they come from kind of the same roots, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But
they're both pretty fucked up.
Well, I picture like a sociopath, like the Tasmanian devil, like just so much like less control, and then like a psychopath is like meticulously writing down a plan and like really wants to hurt people.
So Joe Goldberg from You, a sociopath.
Psychopath.
He would be a psychopath.
He's very meticulous, although he does have some impulsivity issues for sure. But most of his stuff is very, very well thought out and planned. Spoiler alert.
See, I already confused him. That's what I thought I was diagnosing him as.
No.
I give up.
But spoiler alert for anyone out there, if you haven't seen You, plug your ears or put earmuffs on. But like example would be his cage. That is so meticulously thought out. And everything from how he gets the victims in there and what he does with them in there. Of course, there's wrenches thrown into his plan. And that's when you see that anger and violence and things like that come out. Mm-hmm. But I would say he's definitely more psychopathic than anything else.
True. Even him like hiding spare keys in case he ever gets locked in there and things like that. Yeah.
Which is nuts. I loved that show. So good.
I'm sad it's over.
Me too. I know. I heard you're mad about that.
Mad that one day. Thank you for listening.
But I will say, in all my years of experience, I can probably count on one hand the amount of individuals that I truly feel were most likely psychopathic. And the only way I can describe it is, this is just my experience. I don't know if other people would say the same, but first of all, there's just nothing in their eyes. Like we have this term, we have like psychotic eyes, where if somebody is really psychotic, in our profession, we're just like, we know instantly based on just the way their eyes look. And I also think that there's psychopathic eyes, and they're just soulless. There's like nothing there. And the only way to describe the feeling, and I'm thinking of the first and probably most significant person that I would say was psychopathic that I've met. And it was like my bones were cold, is like the only way to describe the physiological sensation of like sitting in a room with the person and being like, oh, you are like that level of psychopathy.
That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
To just look into someone's eyes and be like, you don't have any empathy, any remorse, like you're gone.
Mm-hmm. And you said that's like their wiring essentially.
That's what Dr. Hare and his research and most of the research that has followed that has kind of come to the consensus of, especially with brain scans and things like that, showing that there's differences in the brain, chemistry and brain functioning, which is also scary because that means they're possibly born that way. And that's wild to think about.
Yeah. Well, obviously the people that you're treating are in there for different reasons. They're I guess diagnosed with different things, but all in all, I guess my question is, do you think in that environment that people are capable of changing?
100%. I actually think that's a really unfortunate misconception of people that are incarcerated. There are definitely people who are incarcerated that I fully, in my heart of hearts, don't think will ever change. But there are significantly more human beings in prison that are absolutely capable and willing to change. And I say this a lot because, especially having worked with people that are incarcerated for over a decade now, there are very good people in prison that just made very bad mistakes. There are also very bad people in prison that also made very bad mistakes. But there are more good people that made bad mistakes. And I think that should not get lost on people by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a great message and an important question. Good question, Lexi.
Do you have any other misconceptions with psychology in general that you'd like to share?
I think going back to my love-hate for media and social media in general, for the love of God, can we stop portraying psychologists as being romantically involved with their clients? That is like the biggest ethical violation. And for some of us, like us in correctional settings, it's very illegal. So please, 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 that doesn't happen. You're not going to fall in love with your therapist. Your therapist is not going to fall in love with you. And if they are, get a new therapist, because they shouldn't be practicing anyway. And also, we don't ask you how you feel.
Sorry.
That's such a huge thing, especially in media, where every psychologist is like, and how does that make you feel? I don't think I've ever asked a client or patient that ever in my life.
Wow, that's all I
Maybe
think
we
about.
should try it sometime.
Maybe I'm missing out on a wonderful clinical intervention.
Maybe you would get some really good answers. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably not.
We'll see. I'll try it out tomorrow.
Right.
Well, next up, we have some listener questions that are kind of personal about your life outside of work and managing that.
Okay.
First question. Do you psychoanalyze your friends outside of work?
No.
She says no, period.
Oh, yeah, right. Every time I talk, I see... No, I'm just kidding.
Here's why. I do that 40 hours a week with very complex and sometimes emotionally draining people. I don't have the emotional bandwidth or the cognitive bandwidth to do that with everybody in my life. And so we do this defense mechanism called compartmentalization. It's a coping skill and defense mechanism to protect our mental health, right? So if I leave work, I have something physical outside of work that is my mental note to say I'm off psychology duty. Like the hat of psychologist is coming off. And I think that's actually another misconception I would say, is that we aren't analyzing everything people say all the time. That would be absolutely exhausting. Now, if somebody comes to me and asks me to hear them out or asks for advice or whatever, most of the time I'll ask, like, do you want friend Ashley response or do you want psychology Ashley response? Because the delivery might be very different depending on which you ask. But I'm not
shaking her head yes, like this has happened to her before.
But really all that comes down to is like, do you want me to be straightforward and me tell you that you fucked up and you need to take accountability for your actions? Or would you like me to wrap that in a very delicate package and have you come to that decision yourself? It's really
please just let me say it. Let me say it.
But no, I don't. I don't think a lot of people in this field do, simply because, as I said, I think that would be very exhausting if you didn't turn that off and let your mind and body reset. So good question though.
Yeah. I feel like I always say I have a pretty good read on people when I meet them, but that must go to a whole new level with you. How, like you mentioned, you turn your brain off. You're not diagnosing your friends, but when you're meeting strangers, is it hard to shut that off still?
I think it's not that I'm diagnosing them, and I'm not even analyzing them. I think I'm just very quick to pick up on on like red flags or even green flags with people. Also, shout out to the red flag guy. I don't know if you see him on social media. He is literally the cutest thing in the entire world. Please look him up, and you should have him as a guest on your podcast. So
I'm going to have to find him.
The red flag guy, yes. But I think I'm just knowing human behavior. Like, I'll pick up on certain things. And if it's somebody that I'm going to continue some sort of relationship with, a friendship or acquaintance or whatever, I'm going to take note of that, especially if it's a red flag. And I'm going to adjust my interactions based on that. But I'm not sitting there being like, oh, what does this red flag mean? Are they diagnosed with someone? What are they thinking? How are they acting? I'm not doing all of that. It's just kind of a mental note of like, that's kind of a red flag, move on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
What are some red flags that do stick out to you when you first meet someone that we should keep in mind of?
I think I'll use kind of an exaggerated one. For me, the like desperate need for attention is a red flag to me. Not that they have like a mental health condition, not that they're psychopathic or anything like that. But for me personally, I feel like I'm going to be smothered in that attention-seeking behavior. And then it's going to, like, there's no point of me existing in that space because there is no room for me. And so, like, there's no shared space. That's what I mean. And so that's a huge one I noticed right away. Like, if somebody is just desperately trying to get attention at a party, or, you know, there's an event going on and it's not for that person, but all the attention is on that person, that's a red flag to me. And the sad thing is, it's probably because that person most likely lacks confidence. And so they're seeking that validation for their own self-worth or whatever it might be. And I can understand that and sympathize with it. But it's usually a red flag because I'm not their therapist. I won't be their therapist. I'm not going to sit there and validate everything that you do to make you feel better. You need to go find your own therapist and work that shit out. So,
okay, we're going to play a game called Red Flag or just Quirky.
Okay.
So
it's like, great. All of these years of school are getting put to very good use.
Yeah, it all boils down to this moment. Basically, we're going to throw out some traits, and Ash has to decide if it's a genuine red flag or just a harmless little quirk.
Okay.
So this individual uses astrology to make major life decisions. Quirky or red flag?
I'm going to say I lean more towards quirky with that one. Okay. What do you think?
Quirky, for sure.
I think that's quirky too. I mean, it depends on the questions being asked, maybe. Like whether you, I don't know, become a serial killer or not.
Hey,
Let's
people just want
stars.
They just want something to believe in. So I don't know how using astrology or like a church situation is very different, to be honest.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm
Fair
like,
enough.
I mean, it's kind of spiritual, right? So who are we to judge? Follow your stars, girl.
Yes, you gotta make a decision somehow. I mean, fuck it.
All right.
Astrology could be the best way.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mad Dog, you want to pick one?
This person has a burner Instagram account to stalk people.
Red flag.
Ooh, tell us more.
What's your reasoning?
Why are you stalking people?
Okay, fair enough.
Get a life.
That should be the red flag.
Do you think that there's more people than we know out there that have fake Instagrams to stalk people?
Yes. Yeah.
Having our podcast Instagram and my personal, to see how fast you can flop back and forth by clicking a certain button, I bet there's so many. It's way too easy to go back and forth to the accounts on Instagram.
But not on TikTok, so we complain all the time about switching back and forth. It's like 2 clicks, but it's too much for us. Okay, next one. This individual calls their ex their best friend and still hangs out with them.
I need more information about that.
Red flag.
Typical.
Because what if the ex was like a high school ex and you're 30 some years old and you haven't had anything in between?
Okay.
I still think to like call them your best friend. Like we all know that situation. It's like attention seeking kind of, or I can't.
It's just like you keeping them from moving on, but you don't want them either.
The best friend thing is weird. I would say that probably pushes it to red flag. Being friends with an ex is not necessarily a red flag.
I agree wholeheartedly with that situation.
Yeah.
But the best friend is like a letting go situation that just isn't happening for whatever reason.
That's a little weird.
Insecurity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let me pick one. Ooh. Refers to their dog as their actual child.
I hate it, but it's quirky.
Me too, because I can relate.
I can relate as well.
Yeah. I mean, I do call Bowie my fur baby, so that's fair, but it's annoying, but it's not a red flag.
Okay. Last one.
Thinking this.
Has a favorite serial killer and talks about them a lot.
Oh, I don't talk about them a lot, only when I'm asked.
You only present them in all their glory to a class of people.
I do think I don't think it's quirky, but I don't necessarily think it's a red flag either, because
beige flag.
What if they're just really into psychology and diving into the minds of serial killers?
Exactly. Now if that person is like, oh, I really liked the way that Ed Gein shaved the skin off that body and I want to make a lampshade like that, then that's a red flag.
I would say so.
So I think it's a beige. I think it could be, depending on how they're talking about it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks so much, Ash, for coming. Unfortunately, we are coming down to our timeline, but I have so many more questions for you, and we're going to definitely have to have you back.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. This was super fun, and my therapy voice did not come out, so that's a good thing to know.
You mean I have yet to hear your therapy voice?
You have not heard it yet.
Such a woman of mystery. I love you.
Well, I think people have learned so much today. I know that I have, and just a shout out to people. If you're thinking about therapy or feeling stuck in your own head, let this be your sign to talk to someone. And Ash, do you have anything else? Any last ideas or thoughts?
No, I'll just echo what Maddie said. Please don't wait to get help. If you are struggling, tell somebody, reach out to somebody. There's so many resources out there. 988 is the mental health emergency and suicide lifeline. You can call or text it 24/7. And if you are somebody who notices somebody struggling, ask the questions. Ask the important questions.
Well, thanks again. And on that note, I mean, not to make it super,
I don't want to follow up with a selfish ask, but don't forget to follow us.
Don't forget to follow us for new episodes on Friday on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and leave us a little love if you liked this episode.
We're also on Instagram and TikTok at Wait You're Mad.
Bye.
Bye.